This is the Dr. Jill Trent Super Secret Strategy Guide. And the primary strategy is that half the cards are considered low value and you want to play them early in the match, saving up her high value cards for late in the match. And that's all because of her special ability, which is that she has a gadget. She has two gadgets, and you activate at the start of your turn one of the two gadgets. And so we have the Hypno Ray Blaster there, and we have the Ultra Biotic Tonic. So the Hypno Ray Blaster is where you're going to want to start the gadget on your turns in the beginning of the game. If your card's printed value is lower than your opponent's, you get to reveal the top card of your opponent's deck, increase the value of your attack by the boost value of the revealed card. So you start with a low value card, and then you get to boost it with more power. Whereas the tonic, after combat, if your card's printed value is higher than your opponent's, Jill Trent recovers 1 health. So later in the match, when you're low on health, use those high printed cards and hopefully gain back some health. So that is the basic premise of the strategy, but now we're going to go specifically into each card to see how that strategy plays out. So in the beginning of the fight, you're going to have full health. So you do not want to have the tonic on. You want to have the Hypno Ray Blaster to begin, and that's when we're going to want to play those low cards. So you have the Utility Belt and Battle of Wits. Utility Belt has a value of 3. Battle of Wits has an attack value of 2. With the Battle of Wits, you reveal the top card of your deck and your opponent's deck. If your card has a higher boost value, then you deal 3 damage to the opposing fighter. So even though it has a face value of 2, it has a pretty powerful after combat effect, and in coordination with the blaster, where you might be getting another boost value to it. And then with the Utility Belt, you can recover 1 health, move 1 space, or draw 1 card. So it'll be very good early on for a melee fighter like Dr. Jill Trent to be able to move away from, an attack. After she's on offense, she can avoid damage on defense. So we play those 2 cards early on, because then there is a scheme card that as soon as you play those cards and you have 3 or more of them in the discard pile and you get Helpful Assistant as a scheme, then you're going to want to play it, because you get to shuffle up to 3 Jill Trent cards into the discard pile back into your deck. And both Battle of Wits and Utility Belt are Jill Trent specific cards. So it's a great way to use that scheme, and it's a Daisy only scheme. So you need to use it while Daisy is still alive. So Battle of Wits, Utility Belt, get them into the discard pile. Daisy's still alive. You can use Helpful Assistant. The other 2 cards we're going to want to use early on, and probably before Battle of Wits if you're able to do that. They're both ways of knowing what's coming next, which helps you win Battle of Wits. So Insightful Deduction and Status Diffuser. Both are versatile cards. Either Daisy or Jill Trent can use them with a value of 3. So you probably want to use Daisy early on to avoid damage to Jill Trent if you have these cards. And with Insightful Deduction, you reveal the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. You put one of them on the bottom of the deck and the rest on top in order. And then that way you can decide who has the higher boost value to play Battle of Wits. So you can put low boost value cards onto the top of your opponent's deck. So it's a really great card to play before Battle of Wits. And then Stasis Diffuser, the value of your opponent's card is equal to its printed value and cannot be changed. So again, play Insightful Deduction first, and then you'll know if Stasis Diffuser is a good card to play because you'll know the opponent's card. And you're going to want to do that all with Hypno Ray Blaster because the values are all 3 or less. Early on in the game, you don't need much health, so you should be able to boost those cards as well. So the next 2 cards are kind of our halftime show before we get into the second half of cards that you're going to use. And that's because they're both Daisy cards. So the one is a 5 value Ace Fighter, and you kind of want to use that still when the Hypnotic Blaster is showing because you cannot use the Jill Trent power, that gadget, on Daisy. So even though it's a high value, that's okay as long as Daisy is still alive. And that's why it kind of bridges that first half and second half. You want to use it while you have it and while Daisy is still alive. The other one, bit more interesting. It's a value of 3, Sisters in Arms. The card's effects can't be canceled. And if Daisy and Jill are adjacent and Daisy is attacking, Daisy gains the effect of Jill's gadget. So it can be very helpful while Daisy is still alive to kind of use Jill's strength. And maybe, if 3 ends up being a higher value, you might be able to recover 1 health for Jill Trent. And if, 3 happens to be lower, then you get the boost value. So, whether it is you're playing it while the blaster is on or the tonic, they're both good halftime cards. Which brings us to the second half. So that's when Daisy might be on her last breath. Maybe you don't have any Daisy cards in your hand. And so you have Energizing Spray and Gyroscopic Jetpack. So Jetpack has a value of 4, it's versatile, and Energizing Spray has a value of 5, and it's an attack card. Now is the time, Daisy is on her last leg, maybe she's dead. Jill Trent is in lower health, and so now is the time to turn on the tonic. And with these high values, the 4 and the 5 value, you have a good chance of winning the combat, having the higher face value, and therefore you would recover 1 health. So Energizing Spray also comes with gaining an action, and move your fighter up to 2 spaces. They may move through opposing fighters for the Jetpack. That's a great card to play as a second action if you're fleeing and you want to make sure you don't take melee damage from the opponent. One thing to note here is that these are both cards that either player can use, which is important because the first 2 cards we talked about are Jill Trent cards, and they're the only ones that can be shuffled back from the discard pile using Daisy's scheme, whereas the Jetpack and Energizing Spray can't be. So at this point, Daisy might be dead. You've already used both of the schemes to shuffle back in the cards from previous, so now is the time to play them. So, as you might have figured out, there's still 4 cards left, and these cards are a little trickier to figure out when to use because it depends on what is showing for your gadgets. So, if you use the scheme from Daisy correctly, then you're going to shuffle in some low-value cards that you're going to use later in the game, and therefore you might have the Hypno Ray Blaster showing. And personally, if I know I'm not going to use the tonic, and I have the Hypnotist in my hand, I will try to use the blaster because then come defense, your blaster will still be showing. And the Hypnotist says, if your active gadget is Hypno Ray Blaster, cancel all effects on your opponent's card. So it's really great, especially if you're playing an enemy that has some effects that are just really monstrous and you want to avoid them. Then having the Hypnotist in your hand with the blaster showing and engaged will allow you to really deflect those bad, cancel I should say rather than deflect, those bad effects. And then we have the Indestructible Cloth. It's a value of 5. You can definitely use it when you have the blaster showing. There's really no harm in it. But if you do use it while the tonic is showing, it's much more advisable that way because you have a better chance with a value of 5 to have won the combat. And when you do that, you would get the 1 extra point for Jill Trent of health. Indestructible Cloth says immediately this combat, your fighter does not take damage from effects other than combat damage. And with Laser Pen and Caught Red-Handed, definitely better to use when you have the tonic showing because you never know. But they're okay to use on the blaster because, again, they're not cards that you're going to be setting up to win the game with. They're more of when you're trying to pause and wait for a better setup. And you just need to play any card. So that's why we always say if you need extra 2 spaces of movement, you can also use them to boost a movement, and that's Laser Pen and Caught Red-Handed. So, to summarize the strategy, you want to start with Hypno Ray Blaster on when you want to use your low value. Use your versatile and attack low values for Jill Trent. Because there's the Daisy scheme where you can then get them out of the discard pile, shuffle them back in. You should never have exhaustion when it comes to playing with the Dr. Jill Trent character. And then after you do that, make sure that the halftime cards are played appropriately because you want to make sure you play your Daisy cards while she's still on the board. You probably want to have Hypno Ray Blaster showing for the 3 value card, where when Daisy is adjacent, she can use the gadget. And for the 5 value card of Daisy, won't really matter what happens with the gadget, but it is a great high value to defend with and keep Daisy on the board when she's very low on health. And then finally, we get to the second half where you want to use your high value cards like Jetpack and Energizing, because you will then recover 1 health as long as you have Tonic engaged as your gadget. I just wanted to add a little addendum here. As I was cleaning up, I realized that people might say that the Hypnotist should be played early in the game. And I'm not saying there won't be a situation to play it early in the game, but you will have the Blaster as your gadget late in the game. It'll happen some of the times just based on the cards you have. So I just want to recommend holding on to that Hypnotist card late into the game. So even though you start early in the game with the Blaster and then later in the game you're using the Tonic a lot more, you're probably going to have a 75-25 split, and the Blaster is going to be your gadget at different points in the game, including towards the end of the game. So if you can hold on to at least one of the Hypnotist cards, you do want to use it closer towards the end of the game, especially because you can regenerate health early on in the game. And so I just thought it was an important note because, you know, it seems like it would make sense to use the Hypnotist early, but if you can use the cards I recommended to use early, do that and save the Hypnotist to the end, because you will have your gadget be the Blaster towards the end, especially if you have the Hypnotist in your hand, and it can save you from those kill shots because it is a great card having the Hypnotist when your Blaster is engaged. And that's our Jill Trent Super Secret Strategy Guide. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, like this video if you could. We'll be giving you more videos like this. And comment if you think that there's something different that you would do with Jill Trent. She can be a little bit more of a confusing character, having to manage that Hypno Ray Blaster and that Ultrasonic Tonic. So thanks again for listening. And once again, we hope you can subscribe to the channel to get more videos on Unmatched.